Hello, I'm Berel Dov Lerner. I teach in the Department of Multidisciplinary Studies at the Western Galilee College in Israel. This is my presentation on the Lament for Kibbutz Be'eri for the 5th Memory, Trauma, and Recovery International Interdisciplinary Conference. I will begin with a bit of background. The 9th of Av, the 9th of the Hebrew month of Av, which occurs during the summer, usually in August, commemorates the destructions of the first and second temples in Jerusalem, Babylonian exile, the unsuccessful revolts against the Romans later, and various other unfortunate events in Jewish history. It is a fast day, and it is the most mournful day on the Jewish calendar. On that day, actually in the evening of the 9th of Av, the biblical book of Lamentations is traditionally read in the synagogue. This is texts that were written after the destruction of the first temple and the exile of the Judeans to Babylonia, and it mourns the afflictions of the Jewish people at that time and the destruction of Jerusalem and so forth. In addition to the biblical book of Lamentation, other liturgical laments called kinot in Hebrew were composed throughout the centuries. These refer not only to the destruction of the temples and the exiles, but also to later events such as massacres of Jews during the Crusades, attempts at mass forced conversion of Jews in which Jews chose martyrdom over conversion. Generally speaking, these laments follow the biblical and rabbinic paradigm, which blames exile on Jewish misbehavior, but relates to the later traumatic events. In a different light, there the victims are seen as righteous martyrs. So here we see Kibbutz Be'eri, as part of it looked like after the October 7th Hamas invasion of Israel. It was perhaps the worst affected community in Israel. And here I just quote from Wikipedia: hundreds of Gazan militants and civilian looters attacked the kibbutz, killing and abducting civilians while facing resistance from armed residents. Israeli security forces regained control by the evening of October 8th. A total of 101 Israeli civilians and 31 security personnel were killed, and 32 hostages were taken from the kibbutz. Among civilians killed were women, such as peace activist Vivian Silver, children, one infant. Altogether, they claimed the lives of 10% of the farming community's residents, and a total of 125 homes in the community were damaged or destroyed. So in the wake of these events, a new kina was composed relating to the attack on Be'eri in particular. And here we see the cover of a publication put out by one of the Israeli rabbinical organizations, the Tzohar organization, which suggested that Kinat Be'eri should be included in the liturgy for the 9th of Av. And this booklet contains the words of the poem, some background, and the explanations why it should be included. Now I'd like to share with you a little bit of a musical production of Kinat Be'eri.
ויום מאורי הפך שחורי והושחת כל פרי ונהפך אל שירי אני נובע מים מעומק שברי.
Non-Israeli audience may be somewhat puzzled by the style of the singing of Kinat Be'eri. It may sound a bit Mid-Eastern or Arab to you, and there's a good reason for that. The composer of Kinat Be'eri is Yigal Harush, an Israeli singer-songwriter whose family is of Moroccan descent. And this is hardly surprising because just over half of Israel's Jewish citizens come from families which escaped persecution in Muslim communities in the Middle East and North Africa. So that explains the style. Here, I think I've produced the first translation of Kinat Be'eri into a European language. And let me just go through it quickly to give some indication of its contents. Okay, it begins, how did Be'eri, which means my well, become my grave, and the day of my light become my darkness, and all my fruits ruined and my song upturned, my eyes well up from the depths of my calamity. I have to explain here that the Hamas attack occurred on what is usually the most joyous festival on the Jewish calendar, Shmini Atzeret, Simchat Torah. That is why it's being referred here as the day of my light. And my song is upturned because this is a day in which the synagogue service includes quite a bit of singing and dancing, usually. How did the Torah, all properly laid out, yet all her splendor offered no help? Again, one aspect of Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah is that it marks the end of the yearly reading of the Torah, the 5 books of Moses in the synagogue, and starting it over again from Genesis. And people, they dance with the Torah scrolls, which are bedecked in various kinds of decorations. And in the day of her glory of the Torah, I was disfigured, my eyes well up from the depths of my calamity. How did Israel, in the day of calling to God and appealing for life, receive turmoil? This refers to another aspect of the liturgy. It's the beginning of the petition from God for rain. It's the beginning of the rainy season in Israel. And the prayer for rain emphasizes that the rain should be for life and not for death. All right, elderly and infant rolling in blood in the holy day, desecrated by a cruel enemy, my eyes well up from the depths of my calamity. How were mothers and girls and young women led into captivity as in the days of pogroms? This will become important afterwards. And the fences of the righteous flock breached, and the dancing and the melodies of my singers ended, my eyes well up from the depths of my calamity. And how I am perplexed, exalted Creator, until when will my nation suffer turmoil? Until when will its stature be lowered to the ground? But now rise up to light my lamp, and let the spring of your compassion cure my anguish, and my eye welling up, its tears will nurture Be'eri. So here are a few comments on this liturgical poem. First of all, I think it serves as a kind of flashbulb memory. It was written not long after October 7th, so that first of all, it describes the attack on Be'eri in a very uncontextualized way, just referring to the attack itself. There's no mention of the larger invasion that took place on that day, and it is not viewed as belonging to a long war that followed and included Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen and so forth. and it is also not viewed as part of the greater Arab-Israeli conflict. Furthermore, no mention is made of the battle to free Be'eri, including the now legendary heroism of the so-called Sevet El-Hanan, the El-Hanan team. This was the two Kalmanson brothers from Othniel, who of their own volition, hearing the news of the attack, drove down to Be'eri, picking up a cousin of theirs on the way, and they just drove into the middle of the whole mess and started evacuating people from their homes until eventually Elchanan Kalmanson was killed by Hamas fighters. This is not mentioned. It's something that these acts of heroism only came to the public consciousness later. We also have to see that the poem represents the author's perspective on what happened. Kibbutz Be'eri itself is a very secular place. They did build a synagogue in 2006, but according to conversation I've had with one of the people from Be'eri, while they're aware that some kind of service was planned for the evening of the holiday in the synagogue, they really didn't know too much about it. It didn't sound like a lot of people were going to attend, and they found no record of a celebration being planned for the morning. Now, Yigal Harush, who wrote the Kinat Be'eri, grew up in an observant family, and I think that Kinat Be'eri reflects how more traditional Jewish Israelis experienced the October 7th invasion, where they may already have been they may have already started the morning services for Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah, and missiles started falling, and young men started being called up for emergency reserve duty. And so it really was more experienced by those people as a kind of desecration of the holiday, really stopping the holiday celebrations in the synagogue in the middle. It's interesting that he mentions a pogrom. How were mothers and girls and young women led into captivity as in the days of pogroms? I don't know of a kina written about a pogrom, but there is perhaps the most famous poem in modern Hebrew poetry. Chaim Nachman Bialik, who's considered the national poet of Israel, wrote a poem called To the City of Slaughter in reaction to the Kishinev pogrom in 1903, a very famous pogrom that brought about a huge international outcry, and also was an important motivator in the burgeoning Zionist movement. And here's a quote I translate from that poem. Note also, do not fail to note in that dark corner and behind that cask crouched the husband's, bridegroom's brothers, peering from the cracks, watching the sacred bodies struggling underneath, the bestial breath stifled in filth, swallowing their blood, watching from the darkness, the lecherous rabble portioning for booty their kindred and their flesh. So Bialik attacks the Jewish victims for, well, historically it's not completely accurate, but he sees them as not having had the will to defend themselves, and he attacks them for this. And the pogroms became, especially in the light of this poem, in the Zionist mindset, typical of diaspora life in which Jews were incapable of defending themselves from attack. This made the events of October 7th especially searing for the Israeli public, because it seemed to be that here Israeli communities were suffering the kind of attacks which were associated with life in the non-Zionist diaspora. And this takes a special twist in connection with the population of Be'eri. And here I must tell you about the Farhud, which is something you may not have heard of. Here I quote from Wikipedia. It's the Farhud, June 1st, 1941. The Farhud is the pogrom or violent dispossession that was carried out against the Jewish population of Baghdad, Iraq, on the 1st to 2nd of June, 1941. Immediately following the British victory in the Anglo-Iraqi War, more than 180 Jews were killed and 1,000 injured, although some non-Jewish rioters were also killed in the attempt to quell the violence. Looting of Jewish property took place and 900 Jewish homes were destroyed. So here we find the paradigm of what's usually thought of as a European or Russian pogrom happening in the Middle East. These were the kinds of events that motivated the vast majority of Jews living in Muslim lands to leave those countries and move to Israel. And in fact, in reaction to this, we had the formation of Hagarin HaBavli, the Babylonian collective. In Jewish literature, Iraq is often referred to as Babylonian. Babylonia in 1946, a group of young Iraqi Jews, largely in reaction to the Farhud, formed a group to move to Israel, and they were among the founders of Kibbutz Be'eri. There's a quote from the founders: "We emigrated to Israel from Iraq so that Arabs would not enter the homes of Jews and kill them." So interestingly, we find this pogrom narrative really has a place in reference to the experience of Be'eri. Will Kinat Be'eri enter the liturgy? Who knows? We'll have to see if rabbinical authorities accept it, and if it is felt to properly represent the events as they are increasingly understood with the continuation of history. In any case, here is my email address. If anyone would like to write to me, thank you very much. That's it.